The Brutalist is a movie about a talented Jewish architect and Holocaust survivor who struggles with life in America after escaping Nazi Germany during World War II. The movie The Brutalist is not based on a true story, but it is based on true architecture. In this video, I'll compare what's real and what's made up in the film The Brutalist. We'll look at the real people and things that inspired this 3.5-hour saga. This art history analysis is my researched opinion, and it may include some blind spots. As always, I encourage you to leave thoughtful comments. This is what I learned. What does brutalist actually mean? Brutalism is a modern architectural movement that began in the 1950s and lasted until the early 1980s. It was most popular in Eastern Europe, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Brutalist buildings used a lot of concrete. In fact, the word brutalism comes from the French phrase béton brut, which means raw concrete. Brutalist buildings are strong and large. This makes them perfect for public housing, libraries, community centers, universities, and even zoos. The word brutalist is most often used to refer to a style of building, but in the film, one must assume that a brutalist is one who practices brutalist architecture. However, this film is probably called The Brutalist because the main character's journey is cruel, brutal, and harsh. He does use a little bit of concrete, though. One of the very first shots of The Brutalist is this New York City cityscape. These are Beaux-Arts style buildings. Beaux-Arts, which is spelled kind of like Beaux-Arts, was old school. It was inspired by French Regency architecture. It used elaborate facades and lots of embellishment. Modernists argued that Beaux-Arts was tired, frivolous, and indirectly led to World War I. When I saw this opening shot, I thought I had better put my art history hat on to watch this movie. It seemed to me that this shot creates intentional contrast between old school architecture like Beaux-Arts and new school architecture like Brutalism. Adrien Brody's character Laszlo Toth is not real, but he is inspired by a real architect. Laszlo Toth's closest analog is probably Marcel Breuer. Why, here he is in his famous Vasily chair. USA Today says, like Toth, Breuer was a Hungarian Jewish architect who worked in the Brutalist style, but unlike the character, he moved to New York in 1937, before World War II. Like Laszlo, Marcel Breuer studied at Germany's Bauhaus school. The Bauhaus school is basically the birthplace of modern design. Bauhaus uses sleek, straight lines and pure materials like steel and glass. It wanted to be practical, efficient, and give everyday people access to fine design. While at the Bauhaus, Marcel Breuer designed this iconic chair. It's called the Breuer chair. The chair uses a steel cantilever shape to support the back and seat. He also designed this chair. This is called the Vasily chair. It uses the same tubed steel and uses dyed leather strips to support the body. No cushions allowed. In the film, we see Laszlo welding the steel that will become his version of the Breuer chair. His desk and chair set has the same tubed steel, the cantilever design, and the same dyed leather strips. This sleek, modern design stands in stark contrast with the Pennsylvania Dutch-style furniture at his cousin's store, which is mostly carved out of wood. Although Laszlo's design is very modern, I find it to be a bit awkward because of the side of drawers, which seem to take up lots of extra space. Additionally, Laszlo chooses ornate brass drawer pulls, which clash with the rest of the modern design. If I were a Bauhaus professor, I'd give this design a C-, if they gave letter grades, which they didn't. In Act 2, Laszlo renovates a library for the wealthy American Van Buren family. This library is not an example of brutalism. It is an example of Bauhaus or modern design. The hideaway bookshelves are sleek and save space. The wide windows and blonde walls provide lots of natural light, which is another energy-saving trick. And then there's this chair. This chair looks to me like a take on Ludwig Mies van der Rohe's chaise longue, pictured here. Like the Breuer chair, the chaise longue uses tubed steel and an elegant cantilever base. Laszlo's chair uses leather straps just like the Vasily chair. The latticework also reminds us of a beach chair. The whole thing is equipped with an innovative take on the Kindle arm. What do you think? Would you like to sit in this chair? Let me know in the comments. I personally think this library is stunning. I give it an A. In the film, Mr. Van Buren uncovers Laszlo's architecture portfolio. Laszlo was supposed to be a famous architect back in Germany before the war. This is probably the Brutalist's most tragic embellishment. In real life, German Jewish architects had their licenses revoked in the early 1930s. The Bauhaus school closed in 1933 under pressure from the Nazis. Most of the early modernist buildings were destroyed by the Third Reich, which hated the modernist movement. One of the few exceptions was the Bauhaus school itself, but even this underwent a daunting restoration project. The Brutalist co-writer Mona Fastwald says Judy Becker, our production designer, looked at drawings and unrealized building plans from architects who didn't survive. It was our wish to try and pay tribute to them, that if someone had an experience similar to our main characters, we would be mindful in our depiction. But we couldn't find anyone like Toth. Laszlo's portfolio is truly wishful thinking. It's also a little bit clashing. This design combines a shrunken version of the Dessau Bauhaus's workshop wing with a brutalist wall similar to the ones at the Buffalo City Court building. The windows in these two designs have violently competing goals. One is letting in a lot of natural light, one almost none. And these design schools are nearly 3 decades apart. The production team used Midjourney to come up with these designs, and I did feel like they felt more like digital mashups than they did authentic homages to German pre-war architects. I give Laszlo's portfolio a D. In the film, Harrison Van Buren, who is also not a real person, commissions Laszlo to build a community center. That part is based on a true story. Filmmaker Brady Corbett said, "There was a book called Marcel Breuer and a Committee of 12 Plan a Church, and narratively that was one of the biggest inspirations. It's a pretty dry account of the struggles Breuer went through to realize St. John's Abbey in Minnesota, and there's some inferences of the bigotry he faced. This is St. John's Abbey. It's a church and university, but it looks like a concrete drive-in to me. It does share a crowning crucifix motif with the center in The Brutalist." In the film, the actual community center remains unfinished most of the time. I think Laszlo's community center actually has more in common with the Holocaust memorial Yad Vashem. In Act 3 of The Brutalist, which takes place 30 years later and is in Venice, Italy, gee, I wonder why this won the Venice Film Festival award, Laszlo receives a Lifetime Achievement Award. While giving the award, his niece says, "The building referenced his time at Buchenwald, as well as the deeply felt absence of his wife, my Aunt Elisabeth. For this project, he reimagined the camp's claustrophobic interior cells with precisely the same dimensions as his own place of imprisonment, save for one electrifying exception. When visitors looked 20 meters upwards, the dramatic heights of glass above them invited them free thought, freedom of identity. He further reimagined Buchenwald and his wife's venue of imprisonment in Dachau on the same grounds, connected by a myriad of corridors, rewriting their history and transcending space and time so that he and Elisabeth would never be apart again." In other words, the Van Buren Institute is a homage to Laszlo's Holocaust experience. Buchenwald and Dachau were both real Nazi death camps. Yad Vashem is a Holocaust memorial. The museum has one way in and one way out. This design forces visitors to travel through a myriad of corridors, giving visitors the experience of imprisonment, taking you through seemingly innocent policy changes, to forced relocation, to imprisonment, and finally to extermination. The crushing experience finally spits the visitor out under an open sky. The dramatic heights of glass symbolize freedom and liberation, just like in Laszlo's community center. The skylight at Yad Vashem also illuminates marble plaques, just like the light that shines on the marble slab in The Brutalist. Laszlo's All-American Community Center was secretly a Holocaust memorial all along. Unfortunately, I must give the Van Buren Institute an I for incomplete, as Laszlo did not finish it during the movie. In conclusion, The Brutalist takes a few liberties with history, but honestly, not many. It was my personal opinion that this film required a pretty deep understanding of architecture, World War II, and the Jewish diaspora to properly understand. I felt like I had a pretty deep understanding of all three of these topics, and I still did not enjoy the film at all. What did you think? Leave your answer in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a nice time and learned a bit of something you can use to sound smart at parties. Also, thank you so much for all the support on my Bauhaus versus Brutalism video. It is truly such a joy to get to share art history with the people here. Take care, everyone. Cheers.